Alright, so Charles Oliveira just dominated Max Holloway for 5 whole rounds using the Hamza method. I ain't gonna lie. Actually, no. You know what? I'm gonna be completely unbiased here. Because both of these guys are easily two of my favorite fighters. So before you get clickbaited by the thumbnail, I'm not here to shit on Charles. But being completely unbiased to either dude, both of these guys consistently bring entertaining fights. Yet this fight was just a tiny bit of a stinker. The last 10 seconds, or really the last 5 seconds, was entertaining. But overall, from round 1 to round 5, we had Holloway and Charles trading shots for a couple seconds, maybe 30 seconds max, before Oliveira was close enough to grab a hold of Max and take him down. That happened for all 5 rounds. Now, in all fairness, Oliveira at times lit Max up with elbows. He attempted a significant amount of chokes, but it was fairly similar throughout the fight. You saw a similar thing with DDP and JDM, where you get these guys that they've trained well enough to avoid getting subbed, but they can't get up at all, so they're just down, getting stuck in the same position. They're not getting subbed, but they're not really being able to do much at all. So it's kind of just a stalemate that we've been getting for so many of these big fights recently, and I'm kind of sick of it. But realistically, that's all they need to train to do in these camps, and it works. And when I talk about that, I mean the grapplers. They're just holding these guys down, and they're winning these fights with a few shots just to make sure they don't get stood up. But I think Oliveira did do the best in terms of, if you saw like Islam against JDM, Hamza versus DDP. This is a bit different because Oliveira, he went for a lot more submission attempts. He was landing those elbows. It wasn't too bad. Now, of course, look, it is incredibly boring. Rogan called the audience out for being casuals. Anik and Rogan both called out DC on the mic a little bit for questioning the BMF-ness of a guy holding it down. A guy holding another guy down in a BMF fight. But the truth is that the audience doesn't want to see that. Now, usually it's against guys we really like by guys we don't really like as much. But everyone in the world loves Charles Oliveira. And if you don't, you're crazy. People pay up to $1,000 though for a semi-decent UFC seat. So spending all that just for the fight to go this way is obviously never going to be what people want. If they want to boo, they can 100% boo. And I think it was valid. I'll let it slide though, because Oliveira has been in like 20 plus great fights. Him and even Max Holloway, both of their careers in the UFC have been so long. They talked about it, this is a rematch from their first fight. It's been over like 10 years. I can't remember when the original first fight was, but it's been almost like around 10 years since that first fight. Both of these guys have been in the UFC for so incredibly long, and they've both had some entertaining, amazing, sick fights. But people need to try to get back up, not just to avoid getting submitted, because it's not really working. You can't just rely on the fact that every round starts on the feet, because these guys are going to be able to capitalize with short amount of time, but whatever. Hopefully this changes. Whatever, it is what it is. Obviously, it's understandable that at the highest level, especially for gold, people will do whatever they need to win, but I think stuff like this is bad for the sport. In my opinion, I just don't know how you can change it though. Don't give dudes performance bonuses for holding guys down. I swear, if Charles gets a bonus for laying on Max, that'll piss me off. But a win is a win, nonetheless. Congratulations to Charles. But where do we go from here? Well, look, it's tough because even though I love both guys, even having Charles as my second favorite fighter for a while, I still wanted Max to win for the storyline. Now let me explain. Max had a competitive few rounds with Ilya, the current champ. Now both of these guys have been knocked out by Ilya already. But even at points, outlanding him on the feet, Max was doing well in that first fight. I know a lot of the casual guys are going to say, Ilya destroyed him, annihilated him. But let's face it, Max gave him probably his toughest test out of everyone so far. And that was purely because he was winning. I don't know if he necessarily won the rounds, but he was winning striking exchanges. When they went in to strike against one another, he was landing combos on Ilya. And that fight got into like round 3 or 4. Charles Oliveira got KO'd in round 1, you know? So it's a big difference. So I could see a world in which you gave that rematch to Max, given the fact that it's also at a different weight class. So it would be different for both guys. Obviously, Ilya has improved at lightweight, we think, but we've only had one fight with him, so we don't really know what he's like at lightweight compared to featherweight yet. Obviously, we saw his great KO over Charles, but we still need to see more from him. And then Max, you know, this different weight class has been where he's KO'd Justin Gaethje, where he beat Dustin Poirier, and if he had beat Charles as well, I think that would have, you know, built up a resume back for him to rematch Ilya. But with Charles, I can't really see him ever being able to compete with Ilya again after how dominant that first fight was. Both guys got dominated, but Max had a closer fight with him. If that makes sense. I don't really feel like he was dominated up until that KO, if that makes sense. Whereas Charles also kind of wasn't, but the KO was so quick that it doesn't really matter, if that makes sense. If you get what I mean. You know what I'm saying? But look, here's what I have to say. Here's what I'm thinking, okay? Why not run back him versus Arman? Charles versus Arman. If Arman wins, he can finally get his title shot. This time it's 5 rounds, which I think their first fight was lacking. It will probably be another grappling type BMF fight, but screw it. We open that up tonight. Won't hurt to open it up again. I don't know how you'll be able to convince people that Charles can get that rematch with Ilya, even after that Arman fight, if he were to win that rematch. But hell, Gaethje was on the bad end of one of the best KOs of all time, and is now scheduled for Ilya in June. So whatever, it's possible. Plus that'll be a title fight for Arman, even if it's not undisputed. After that wrestling match brawl, I think the UFC is going to stay pissed off at him, but I believe that this would be a good fight for him. Hopefully soonish after the White House fight, so that he can line up with Ilya if they both win. I do think Oliveira will be a tough challenge for him though. Now as for Max, he said in the post-fight that he'll be back, and he's still aiming for the title shot again. Which kind of surprised me, but I mean, what else really is there for him? He's still young enough in the game to where he can probably go on another run. But I feel like this was probably his last chance at a proper run. But I thought the same with Oliveira, and here we are 2 fights into his build back up for the title. And look, I mean, as I said before, the Gaethje thing, Gaethje's fighting for the title next, and Max KO'd the hell out of him. So it really just depends on the situation you're in. Of course, he can probably get another title shot in his career, but this was his last, I think, proper chance at a run. I don't know how he's going to be able to build himself back up to prove himself, but more difficult things have happened. I'm thinking the same thing with Oliveira. But yeah, look, I do think that it's a bit of a strange thing with Max, because I thought that he was on a good run, creating some new blood in this division. But now that I think about it, he really is just on a 1-win, 1-lose type of part of his career at the moment. You know, beating Gaethje, losing to Ilya, beating Dustin, losing to Oliveira. So he's going to have to do something to step himself out again. But one matchup I do like in particular for him right now, that probably obviously won't be able to get him back to a title, but one that will just get him back on a win streak, is maybe the BSD fight. He just got a big win against Dan Hooker last month. He's on a streak himself, called out Holloway and some others last time out. I think these two would probably make for a pretty BMF fight. I think they both... Look, I think the UFC wants to build BSD for the French market. If they're looking at Holloway, he's similar to Dan Hooker in the sense that they're both very striking heavy. Obviously, just one is way better than the other. So it would be a good test for BSD that I think would get him in line for a title shot with that win. So I quite like that fight for BSD. And then, you know, for Max, it's a good bounce back fight. Sort of similar to the Oliveira Gamrot situation that he was in. putting him back into a win column before he gets another big fight again. I think it would be good for both of them. You know, good bounce back for Max. BSD has some grappling threat, so I think it would be good practice for him too. A lot of people were saying Holloway versus Paddy next, but hell no. I think Max is too big of a threat for a guy like Pimmer. Pimmer just lost to Gaethje on the feet. Imagine what Max would do. Maybe after this fight, it's possible that we could suggest Max would be taken down easier than Justin, but I don't think it would be wise to do that one as of yet. It did kind of surprise me just how poor Max showed off his takedown defense in this fight, but I mean, look, Ilya took him down as well, so maybe we could have expected that. Imagine if Ilya had done the same thing. That's why you got to appreciate Ilya for what he's doing. He can choose to hold guys down. He was holding Max down for a little bit, but I don't know. He seems to instead want to go for the KO. He wants to go for the more interesting option. Maybe you couldn't hold down Max as well as Charles was doing. Maybe that was it, because I think Max did get up from that. But look, you guys let me know what you think of the fight below. What do you guys think should be next? What do you guys think of my options for the matchmaking? As always, like and subscribe. And yeah, I don't know. Not my favorite fight or event, but maybe you guys liked it more. Let me know, and see you guys later.